It's time for Healing Utah, a program dedicated to helping Utahns heal from addictions to drugs, alcohol, pornography, and other addictions. Your host is Abby Bonnell, along with the co-founder and CEO of Utah Addiction Centers, Jeremy Boberg.
Jeremy, it's so good to have you back again. This is such a busy time of year for all of us, isn't it? We've got the holidays fast approaching. We've got Thanksgiving knocking on the door, of course, this Thursday, followed by Christmas. And it's a kind of fraught time, especially if you're dealing with some personal issues. And then you're with family and all of those issues get magnified. You've got some great advice for us today. I know we have plenty of people who are listening. If they don't have a challenge, maybe somebody they're inviting, a family member or a friend is coming into the home with kind of issues, and you need to kind of steer us, guide us. How do we best handle it, Jeremy?
Thanks, Abby. You know, it is an exciting time of year. We get together with our families and our loved ones, and we go out and play or, sit in and just kind of hunker down and reminisce. For the most part, it's a fun time, and memories are created. Sometimes those memories aren't as good as we had hoped for in some situations. And I think coming forward today in this specific episode, let's discuss what takes place in some of these families where we have an addict, where we have somebody who has mental health issues, or just simply where we're not getting along, and discuss kind of some avenues for those individuals. How do I cope? How do I get through this?
And how do you? You are in a confined space for hours, sometimes days. The family have come in for 2 or 3 days to stay. And, if somebody has an issue with alcohol, and you're right, mental illness, how do you go about that? Or if somebody's not even recognizing that they have a problem, how do we handle it?
I can picture the listeners out there and just experiencing this right now. Do I even want to go? No, it's a setup, because oftentimes they've been hurt so badly by sometimes that, and they're thinking, why would I keep? I don't want to go. And this is the first step is making decisions, going into the situation with a loved one or a family member who is currently using or whether it's a drug, alcohol, or a behavior that is toxic, or going into a toxic environment where the loved one is hurtful, maybe mean-spirited, that they know that they're going in to be bullied. Again, the first step is this the right step for me? Is this a healthy environment for me? Am I healthy enough to be able to make this work? Or am I just, going into this and contributing to the abuse or being abused? The next step is once we've decided, we're going to be with our family. Mom's a little bit controlling, or dad's going to be under the influence, or brother, I'm not sure, where he's at, what's going on. And, at that point, having healthy boundaries is vital. Knowing, and planning ahead on how you're going to interact, and at what point do you step back versus engage in the conflict.
Is it advisable not to go if you think it's going to be a big problem?
It can be, yeah, absolutely. This is the part where, I would put on the therapist hat and say, you probably ought to talk to your therapist, or find a counselor to help you through this. If you're not sure really how to interact, at this point, this is the part where family counselors, marriage and family therapists are phenomenal for this part.
And this is a good time too, I think, for family to address if there is an issue with one of their loved ones, how to go forward and really broach the subject of treatment.
It could be. And in some instances, it's probably not going to be the best time.
Not that day, but certainly open up the door to that one phone call.
It absolutely does.
It was great to see you. You're looking fabulous. By the way, how are you feeling?
Exactly. And talk. The best way to get a loved one, as an interventionist, I can tell you the very best way to get a loved one in help, whether it's for an addiction, for a mental health issue, whether it's for just family counseling, is to validate them, to love them, to feel them, to help them feel accepted, despite the discrepancies and inadequacies, to help them feel validated, loved, and that, hey, we can do this together.
Yes, you're not being critical, you're being supportive. You want to help them, and there's a big difference, isn't there?
Right, a huge difference.
Stigma, let's talk about that. It's a big issue. A lot of people will brush it under the carpet and say, well, I don't have a problem. I can handle it. I can stop that whenever I want to. I'm not hooked. Where's the difference between addiction and when it becomes a serious issue?
Okay, now you make a good point, because you've got the addict saying, I don't have a problem. And then you've got the family members just saying, suck it up, white knuckle it, get over it. And on both of those, there's a discrepancy, because it's a prevalent part that is so commonly teased about in addiction, called denial. And denial is actually a real part of this disease. We don't see it, the full problem, because of inexperience, lack of understanding, or we're so blinded by the fog of our day-to-day lives, we're not seeing how our behavior is contributing to that disease, whether it's our disease or the disease of a family member. And it's really important to step back, and that's why it's so important to get a counselor, a professional involved in this, who is trained to see the dynamics.
And this is what you deal with on a daily basis at the Utah Addiction Centers. You're located in Eagle Mountain. You really treat all kinds of mental conditions and substance abuse, all of it.
There's not I've been doing this for 16 years, and I've not yet ever treated a patient who does not have an underlying mental health issue. The disease of addiction is a symptom. It's a symptom of underlying issues. We use drugs, alcohol, behaviors like eating disorders or cutting, sex addiction, pornography, social media addictions, money addictions. We use these to self-medicate shame, guilt, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, abandonment. The list goes on. That's what I specialize in.
You always say, don't you, you have to get to the bottom of it. I mean, you have to find the source of the issue before you can kind of get it all fixed and sorted, which you do all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You wouldn't go to the doctor with diabetes and have the doctor say, well, just eat better. He's going to tell you, you need to eat better. You need to exercise. Oh, and here's the medications you need to be taking to maintain and manage the diabetes. They're going to treat the underlying issues. With the disease of addiction, it's the same thing. If we just go to meetings, in some cases that helps, but it doesn't treat the underlying core of what am I self-medicating. And it makes us all susceptible, whether it's a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. We will continue to self-medicate if we still have those core triggers that we're self-medicating. You
say that when somebody initially comes in, it's getting to know you really and trust you, and then those bridges are built very, very quickly. But it's you have to get their story. You have to get them to totally open up, and probably they haven't been able to do that in
that's
years.
The hardest part, Abby.
Yeah.
As when we get clients coming in, whether it's an outpatient or residential treatment, the very hardest part is developing a trust and a relationship with that individual that they open up. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm your therapist. Tell me your deepest, darkest secrets.
Yikes.
Right? and so it does take some time. We have to build a relationship of trust. Mm-hmm. And you have to show that you know what you're talking about. You have to show a skill set, a skill level, and give them solutions to their problems. I can't fix my clients. I teach them tools to fix the problems themselves, and they have to be the ones to do it.
There's outpatient and residential, correct? Yes. And you start treating at 18, the age of 18?
We do. Uh-huh.
And you know what? I think if anybody is listening right now, the best thing they possibly can do if they think they have somebody that they love and really cherish and know that they're in the middle of some kind of terrible challenge and crisis, whether it's denial or whether they're ready to seek help, the best thing they can possibly do is really, as you say, with the intervention, pick up the phone and just have a meeting with you.
Absolutely. If you've got questions, any listeners out there, if they've got questions or are not sure how to deal with this, feel free to call us. We have operators on 24 hours a day who are licensed therapists or counselors or staff who understand this disease. You can reach us at 801-766-2233.
Also, your website, too, is really valuable at healingutah.com.
Yes.
There's a budget to fit everybody's needs, really. That should not really get in the way at all.
Budget should not get in the way. There are avenues, whether it's with a private facility or a public facility, that there are county funded. There are federal block grants that come into the state to help with people with needs, both mental health and substance abuse.
So give them a call, 801-766-2233, 801-766-2233. It's Utah Addiction Center's Jeremy Bober, co-founder, is with me. We'll be back with more invaluable advice coming up in just a few moments.
You're listening to Healing Utah, a program dedicated to helping you deal with addictions. Here again is your host, Abby Bunnell.
Well, great to have Jeremy back in studio again, always giving us some brilliant advice. We were talking about, since you've been doing this show, Healing Utah, you've had a huge response. Lots of people have been sending questions, and don't we all have questions? By the way, if you have one, you can email Jeremy at healingutah.com. That's Jeremy at healingutah.com. You know, one of the most prevalent you always get is, look, I want to help, but he or she keeps pushing me away. I'm so frustrated. I don't know where to turn, what to do. What should I do?
You know, that's a common one, and really it's a difficult one to answer because it's situational. One thing as an interventionist I can address as well is that as we begin to intervene on our loved ones, we start with love and acceptance and validation and ask if we can work together. But eventually it turns to, if we keep being denied, if we keep being shot down, then we need to turn to a professional. That's where it's appropriate to talk to a counselor or a therapist, an interventionist, and strategize what's the best way to reach this individual, because it really does at this point need to be individualized. It's not a one-size-fits-all. But first and foremost, it's can we validate and love them without judgment? Because if somebody feels judged, ridiculed, demeaned, they're less likely to get help.
Take the stigma out of it.
Take the stigma out.
They're loved. That's a really important reference there. And really just give you a call first and foremost, because I know you have an entire team of caring professionals, the best in the business. You're dealing with this day in, day out. Children, young children with all kinds of mental issues, from anxiety, depression, addiction, starting at such a young age. You have outpatient treatment. You also have inpatient, and you treat it all, don't you, Jeremy, at Utah Addiction Centers? We do. And each level of care is going to be predicated upon the need of the individual. So we start with just a basic assessment, get collateral information from the family, and then determine what's the appropriate level of care, whether it's outpatient, day treatment, residential, and then we begin the process of healing the individual and their loved ones. And this is all about quality care, but so affordable too. It is. We'll work with the insurance. We'll work with self-pay. There's several different options, and if we're not the right fit financially, let's refer you to a program or an entity that can assist. There is funding out there and availability. Another big question you're always hearing is, how do I stop being an enabler? Boy, that's a great question. And we see enabling not only amongst our clients, but their families. And enabling, in my opinion, is a form of addiction is in and of itself. It's a form of codependency where my behavior enables the addict to continue the behavior. Oftentimes, somebody who is enabling doesn't see it. It's beyond their capacity, and they're trying and they're trying and trying, and they're drowning themselves. They think they're being loving. They think they're being loving. They think they're being helpful. I've had parents who are so desperate that their son or daughter doesn't live on the streets that they enable them and allow them to stay at home. And not only are they allowed to stay at home, but the parents will go to the dealer and buy their drugs for them so they don't have to go through the withdrawal symptoms because they're so miserable. I have a friend whose mother would actually pay rent for one of her siblings, and bought a car and all of the above, and did it because she thought she was doing the right thing, the loving thing. But it didn't end well, I'll tell you that, and I'll just leave it there. It never does.
And let me remind, not only that does it never do, let me remind all those who are enabling their loved ones, every dollar you spend to help with food, clothing, transportation, school, anything else, is $1 that you're enabling them to spend out of their own pocket on their addiction.
Okay, this is a great question here because it's perfect with you being in studio. If my loved one is struggling with an addiction, where do I even begin to get them help?
Call me.
That's exactly it. 801-766-2233. The Utah Addiction Centers. And you're located in Eagle Mountain. Fabulous facility there, fully trained, all of your staff. You have years of experience in all kinds of addictions, including sexual.
We do, and we are. All of my therapists are not only licensed therapists, but they have extensive certifications. Certifications such as EMDR therapists, trauma therapists, certified sex addiction therapists, marriage and family therapists. We focus in on different specialties for a reason, because all of our clients have underlying issues, and we need to be able to identify those, whether it's you've got multiple personality disorder, bipolar disorder, eating disorders. We have got to be able to meet those needs, stabilize you, and get you the help that you or your loved one need.
And again, if somebody's just joining us, what I love about your work, Jeremy, you say you witness miracles every day, just about.
I do. It's funny because I've never had a divine aha moment. No entity has ever come and personified themselves to me. But in my office, day after day after day, I know there's an existence of a higher power. I've seen too many miracles happen too often to believe something different. It just is.
And it's one of the finest programs in the country, and you're always very honest about this. You did your homework years ago and looked at the best and the biggest, and you brought it here to Utah, but you made it affordable and brilliant care at that price.
Absolutely. I will compare my program to any other program nationwide, and we relate and we work amongst the very best of the best. Everything we do is evidence-based. We are a JACO accredited program, which means that we are top of the line.
Okay, residential, outpatient, all kinds of budgets available, programs available to fit everybody's budget. And if you have a question, you can certainly send it to Jeremy at healingutah.com. Give Jeremy a call and the team over at Utah Addiction Centers. That hotline number is 801-766-2233. As you always say, Jeremy, you can't be healed unless you start to do the first thing, and that's picking up the phone and chatting to one of your therapists.
Absolutely. The hardest part, honestly, the hardest part of treatment is being willing to take that call. My heart breaks for those who are listening and who are just terrified, who are in denial, who are unwilling, because oftentimes their life is the one that is in such chaos and such unmanageable. It is a digressive disease.
My thanks to Jeremy Boberg, co-founder and clinical therapist with the Utah Addiction Centers. Don't forget, you can always give them a call again at 801-766-2233. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me on Healing Utah. We'll be back next Saturday afternoon.
Thanks, Abby. I look forward to it.
You've been listening to Healing Utah, sponsored by the Utah Addiction Center. Join us again next week at this time for a new conversation about the challenges of addictions on Utah's Talk Radio 105.9 KNRS.